Hello and welcome back to Bitesize Boxing. So today I'd like to talk about the much anticipated upcoming heavyweight fight for this weekend, being Arslanbek Makhmudov versus Dave Allen. So this was a fight that has seemingly come around quite quickly. I think I first previewed this when the rumours started for this fight about 2.5 months or so ago. And it's taking place this weekend. It's the biggest fight of Dave Allen's career, and it's really sort of a crossroads fight for Arslanbek Makhmudov. So it's an interesting one. I don't still really know how to feel about it. At the time when I made my initial preview, I kind of said I leant towards Makhmudov, but I wasn't writing Dave Allen off. And to be honest with you, even all these sort of weeks on, I still kind of feel the same about it, to be honest. It's a strange fight. It's one that's kind of come from left field. It's not one that if you'd said a year ago, we would have gone, what? Where's that come from? So yeah, let us start off by talking about Arslanbek Makhmudov. Arslanbek Makhmudov coming in with a record of 20-2 with 19 knockouts. We know what Arslanbek Makhmudov is. He's technically very unrefined, caveman-esque. He just comes forward, he throws punches, and either he takes you out or you take him out. He doesn't appear to hold the best shot. He doesn't really appear to have a particularly good chin. His punch resistance is ropey. I think that's fair to say. The gas tank is, again, yeah, and the technical limitations are there for all to see. He comes forward, he throws punches, and that's it. There's no plan B, it's just a plan A. But he is very big, he's very strong, he's very physical, and he punches bloody hard. So that will always get you to a certain level. Now, of course, where he come up short for the first instance was against Ajit Kabayel over in Saudi Arabia. That was, let's have a look, back in 2023. So that was in many ways Ajit Kabayel's second coming out party. Of course, he'd fought Derek Chisora about 7 years earlier and had a good win over Chisora over in Monaco, and then sort of did nothing for about 6 or 7 years, and then fought Makhmudov and beat Makhmudov in what was a little bit of an upset, because Makhmudov was kind of being sort of sold to us as a little bit of a bogeyman up until that point. He then went in there against Guido Vianello a little bit afterwards. I think he had a comeback fight, then fought Vianello, and I believe he got stopped on cuts in that fight. So again, not the best look, because Guido Vianello is kind of a perennial, top 40 guy, something like that. So Vianello, technically pretty sound, a good all-round sort of boxer, heavyweight boxer, but not pulling up any trees. You know, if you're anyone who's anyone, you're getting through Guido Vianello. So the fact he was getting tagged in that fight and ended up getting stopped, again, it's not the best look. So more recently, he went in there against a Jamaican heavyweight called Ricardo Brown, in which Ricardo Brown was massively overmatched. He shouldn't have really been in there, and he got taken out in a round. So that doesn't really tell us much about where Makhmudov is at. Makhmudov now is 36 years old. He is, of course, from Russia, based over in Quebec in Canada, and that's where he's been fighting under, I believe, Eye of the Tiger, if I'm not mistaken. So that's Arslanbek Makhmudov. We know who he is. He's a scary bastard, but technically limited. Now, Dave Allen, again, we've known Dave Allen. I've been aware of Dave Allen now going over, well over 10 years. Dave Allen is what Dave Allen is. He is kind of a gatekeeper / journeyman, I suppose you would say. He's been used as fodder for prospects coming up over the years. And Dave Allen has his limitations. Let's not get that twisted. Where to start with Dave Allen? I mean, Dave Allen is a guy who, to me, he has semblance of ability there, and he has got some talent, but he hasn't utilised it. And that's been, I think, because of two reasons. For starters, this is a guy whose discipline is absolutely horrible. I mean, I remember talking about this in a fight, in a breakdown. It might have even been about this Makhmudov fight in my initial preview, or it might have been talking about Allen in an earlier video. But I remember there was a fight he had, I think it was against David Howe, and then afterwards, about 2 months later, he'd put on something like 45 pounds, like 25 kilos or something in like 6 to 8 weeks, which is just ridiculous. And the only way you can do that is if you're quite literally sitting down without exercising, eating like 2 McDonald's a day, that kind of thing. And Dave Allen has said he's that kind of guy. He has a very unhealthy relationship with food. He said that, and he struggles in that regard. So Again, Dave Allen has struggled mentally as well, not just from the sort of eating and the overeating side effects, but he's also suffered neurologically as well with things like depression as well. So Dave Allen will be the first person to admit that he's not the most mentally on the straight and narrow guy. He's also had issues with things like gambling as well in the past, which has actually taken time out of the ring. He took a bit of time out and retired briefly when he was still in his prospect phase to get his head straight from that. So Dave Allen is very much an up and down guy. He said this has been a big problem as well in fights. You know, he's going into fight camps, getting into all kind of mischiefs. I remember hearing rumours, which if you've been in the boxing clique, you may well have heard these rumours as well before, where before certain fights, he was engaging in crazy, just loose, mad behaviour. I remember hearing in good confidence about something he got up to at a hotel before one of his major fights, and it was one of those things that when you heard that and then you saw his performance, it kind of made sense. So look, Dave Allen is a guy who is very difficult to kind of predict, because if you get a good Dave Allen and he's on the ball and he's on the money, he can put in a performance like we saw against Lucas Brown. Yes, that was a shot, Lucas Brown, but still, it was a very good performance and it was a disciplined performance. And I would hasten to say, even in that Leroy Thomas rematch before the cut, he looked to me like he was on the job and he was on the money, and he probably would have either got Leroy Thomas out of there or beaten him into submission and beaten him on points. So Dave Allen is a guy who, again, he has his technical limitations, physically ridiculously tough. But I did say there was another issue as well. Of course, the overeating was the first thing, but the second thing is that this is a guy who basically got taken in as fodder for all of the top heavyweights. This is how this guy built his name and his reputation. He got in there with Fury, he was in there with Klitschko, he was in there with Joshua, later Usyk, all these fighters. He has fought everyone and sparred everyone. So by going in there and sparring all these guys, particularly like when AJ was on the GB circuit and stuff like this, he was chief sparring for a lot of these GB guys. So he was going in there against guys he wasn't as technically refined as, and essentially getting beaten up, let's be honest. And as a result of that, he's developed the sparring partner mentality. So he goes in there and he has these kind of slightly cute defensive movements, but he's offensively null and void. He's standing there kind of blocking punches on the gloves and slipping a little bit here and there, but he's not throwing anything back. And that is because this is a guy who spent thousands of rounds in the gym with top heavyweights who he's overmatched against, and he's learned how to survive and navigate those rounds, but not how to win them. And the problem is but when you've got this combination of this fighter who's not disciplined with a fighter who's basically been beaten into sparring partner mode, you get Dave Allen. And so when he is in the ring, there have been times where he's been very frustrating to watch. Again, I think about that Leroy Thomas first fight. I also think about, let's look through some of these fights as well. There's been, I mean, of course, the Fraser Clark fight, he didn't exactly impress there either, did he? You, of course, had the David Price fight in which he was massively overmatched. The Bracamonte fight in which he was far too unfit and then ended up making that fight far too competitive as a result of that. So both of these kind of issues play out in one way or another. If he's in there against a guy who's more skilled than him, he'll freeze often and he just won't throw any punches. He even did that against Luis Ortiz earlier in his career, and he did that against Dillian White earlier in his career. Or he'll go in there far too unfit and end up getting embroiled in wars when he doesn't really need to be, like the Bracamonte fight. So Dave Allen is a funny fighter. You don't really know what you're getting. One thing that would concern me going into this Makhmudov fight would be that I saw footage of him about 8 weeks ago, and this was when he was in camp, and he was, I think a lot of you guys probably saw it as well, he was doing sort of shadow boxing on his patio. And look, the guy was clearly a few stone, if at least, overweight. Nowhere near fighting shape. Even if he is in some kind of semblance of shape now, he's probably lost, again, something crazy like 30 kilos in camp or something like that. So with that in mind, it's a difficult one, because if you're someone who's ever lost a lot of weight, I've done this myself. I've lost a lot of weight earlier this year. I went down from about 110 kilos down to about 66, 67 kilos. So when you lose a massive amount of weight in a short space of time, it leaves you very depleted. I mean, for me, it's been about 4 or 5 months since I lost the weight, and I don't have my full strength back. I'm maybe 60%. And that's sort of adding maybe a couple, 15% each month, something like that, sort of how it feels. But again, it'll probably be a full calendar year before I'm really back to where I would have been had I kept that weight off in the first place. Dave Allen has crash lost his weight in 2 months. I don't know how well that bodes. Again, in that Johnny Fisher rematch, he wasn't in good shape, but he was just better than Johnny Fisher. And again, I still think the Johnny Fisher wins themselves are somewhat overrated. Johnny Fisher is a gimmick fighter. Johnny Fisher was a ticket seller. Johnny Fisher was essentially kind of like a white-collar fighter that was not really polished in the slightest, but he had a fan following, so he kind of translated over to the professional game and Hearn invested in him. He was never a fantastic fighter. I mean, from the outside looking in, Johnny Fisher is someone who you look at and you think he'll do well to win an English title. So by beating him, does that suddenly mean you're going to be going in there against world level heavyweights and being competitive? I'm not sure it does, which is why I was very critical when Dave Allen's name was getting linked to people like Parker. He has no business being in there. If he gets through a Makhmudov and he does it in good fashion, then we can talk about sort of step-ups, but I still wouldn't be happy against someone like Parker, but we can talk about step-ups from there. So I've kind of bounced around everywhere here in this kind of breakdown, but I'm going to try and be a bit more concise and break this down now and sort of come to an ending. So for me, I think Johnny Fisher, I think Dave Allen stands a chance in this fight, but it depends on his output because he is typically very low output. He's quite slow on his feet. He's quite ponderous, and he can't afford to be any of those things against Makhmudov. Makhmudov will walk him down, and Makhmudov will hurt him. The other thing that does concern me is that when he has been in there against bigger fighters than him, I think Ala Fraser Clark, I think David Price, he does seem to struggle with the size and the strength, and they are things that Makhmudov also has in common with those fighters stylistically. I'm not saying he's similar to, Clark and Price generally, but in terms of the physical strength and the way that he imposes himself, there is similarities there. And in both of those fights, Dave Allen struggled massively with the physical strength, and that's something that would concern me in this fight as well. So I think logic dictates me to kind of lean towards Makhmudov in this one. For me, he's lost the weight too quickly. I would worry about what happens if Makhmudov is able to kind of impose himself on Allen and that kind of thing. Would he be able to handle it? Is he going to get kind of dog walked a bit in this fight? His defence is going to need to be better. Yes, he has these good defensive movements, but the problem that I worry about with Dave Allen is that it's a passive defence. The hands go up and he kind of slips a bit, but the feet aren't moving with it. In a fight like this, the feet need to be moving. Yes, Makhmudov is not the fastest. Yes, he's quite stiff and robotic and that kind of thing, but he is someone who does implement something that a lot of Russians do, and that is shifting, where he punches while moving forward, which means that unless you're defensively going back and you're moving backwards and your feet are moving with your hands up, you're going to get caught. So Dave Allen needs to have a mobile defense, which is something he's not really shown up until this point. So look, for me, my eye, I think you have to favour Makhmudov in this one, but if Dave Allen did pull it out, Dave Allen has that overhand right, he can punch, he's not, feather-fisted or anything like that, so Dave Allen has the power to knock out Arslanbek Makhmudov, make no mistake about that, and as much as I don't think Dave Allen has the best gas tank, I wouldn't be surprised if his gas tank is comparable at least to someone like Makhmudov's. So there is every chance that, going late in the fight, he is able to take Makhmudov out, and this kind of thing, if he can weather a storm. So I'm not ruling him out. I'm kind of making this sort of a 60-40, something like that, in Makhmudov's favour. But you let me know what you think. I'd be very interested to know. But yeah, I think it's an interesting fight. It's intriguing. It's one that's kind of come from left field. But yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I think it would be a good one. What do you think? Take it easy. Cheers.